Hello, everybody. This is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield here of Transport Evolved. We did another soft launch of a show. We've done one before on the same topic, actually, ironically, as not ironically, interestingly, as this particular topic we're going to talk about today. This is Transport Evolved Weekend Workshop. You'll notice that we don't have any of the green screens behind us. This is a messy production studio. I've got my cans on, my old-fashioned radio cans. That's what we used to use in the old days of radio. And today I'm doing this because this particular show is designed to be quite geeky. You know, the weekend show, we talk about the week's news. The Friday show, we give you kind of the rundown of the week's news in a very kind of simple format. But today we're doing a kind of a rundown on something called Open Vehicle Monitoring System, and we have with us today the creator of Open Vehicle Monitoring System, Mark Webb Johnson. Hello, Mark.
Hi.
So tell us a little bit about what OVMS is, and we're doing like basically a 101.
Okay. OVMS is a community project. It started by a group of Tesla Roadster enthusiasts and then sort of spread to other vehicles now. Basically what it is a way for us to use our cell phones, either via SMS or via apps, to talk and control our cars.
Right.
So we can look at things like, it's primarily targeted at EVs, although there's no real restriction on that. But it can look at things like what's the status of the battery, where the car is, whether the doors are open, what's the TPMS status, and all sorts of stuff like that. As well as with some cars, it can start and stop the charge and do some more advanced control of the charging. And it works over the cellular network, so it has a little GSM modem.
So it's essentially a little box. I don't know if I've taken mine apart for today's show, but let me just quickly, underneath the camera, put it back together again, and then people can see what it looks like. I'll just slot this back together. It looks like, it looks like this, and it comes in a box, and it's got Open Vehicle Monitoring System on it, and it's a tiny little box, and it plugs into your car's diagnostics port, doesn't it, Mark?
Yeah, and I've actually got the little parts of it here, and I thought it'd be a good start to go through, if you're going to get OVMS, what are the parts you need? So the first thing, I mean, it really comes in three parts. We have a module that goes in the car that connects to the cellular network. We have a server, and the easiest, and you can run your own if you want to, but the easiest one to use is the Tesla Motor Club runs a server for us. And then we have the apps, and we have apps at the moment for Android and iOS, so iPads and iPhones. So if we look at the module itself, this is, as you said, this is what it looks like.
You've got one of the new ones with the nice new logo on it, of course.
Yes. Again, as I said, it's a community project, so this logo was done by somebody, I think he's in Switzerland, actually. It's an architect who does most of our graphics. So inside is a little circuit board, and two-sided. If I run through what you would need to set up OVMS.
Yeah.
So the first is the module.
So which is this thing here?
Yeah. And you'll see on board it's got a little SIM card slot.
Yep.
So it wants a SIM card. So you have to provide it a SIM card.
Now we're presuming at this point, sorry Mark to interrupt, we're presuming at this point that everyone knows what a SIM card is. It's essentially a little device, a little card that you'd find in your mobile phone, and it's essentially the same as the little cards that you find in your mobile phone that make your phone work, that enable you to connect your phone to whichever cell phone provider you happen to choose, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, there's so much variation around the world, so really use whichever's the easiest. I think in Hong Kong we use 3 mostly because it's dirt cheap. It's about $1.50 a month it costs us here, $1.50. In US, I think they use AT&T mostly, and I think there's a thing called GoPhone, which is a prepaid SIM, and that costs about, I think, $7 or $8 US a month.
Right.
UK, I'm not sure what the current recommendation in UK is. I think there's a few different networks
There are
available.
a few different ones, and the UK network is just so so variable depending on where you live, that the SIM
Yeah.
card that you need to buy is, depends on where you live. I've not done what most people do. This is my SIM card here. I've actually got two OVMS modules. I've got one in my Nissan Leaf, because I'm helping you guys develop test the Nissan Leaf implementation. But also the Chevy Volt has one, and they both have an O2 SIM card. That's the SIM card out of mine. Now, we should point out at this point that the SIM card that you need is not it's not a voice SIM card, is it? It's a data SIM card. So tell us about how that works, because people have got a very, people worry about data plans and how much data something like this would use.
Yeah, it uses a tiny amount of data. You can actually use it in two modes. You can get a voice SIM card or a data SIM card, whichever you want. It uses SMS for the initial setup, and you can SMS the module or to talk to your car. So you can sort of, if you send it an SMS stat, it'll reply back with the status. If you send it GPS, it'll reply back with a link to show where it is on the map, etc. You can also use data, GPRS data, and that will allow you to use the cell phone apps to connect to it. So it works in either of the two modes.
Right. And well, I think now is a good place to tell people where to go to actually get the data, not the data, the device. So the first place that you can go to get Open Vehicle Monitoring System hardware is the Open Vehicles website.
Yeah, you'll find some links on the left-hand side.
So we go to Fast Tech.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the links which are interesting. Is GeoSim is another option for SIM. That's like a roaming SIM that works anywhere in the world, and
right.
So we can use you can buy the data version of the SIM there, and it'll work in, as I say, anywhere. The other two links for the actual hardware, which are interesting, if you can go back to the Open Vehicle site, is the Fast Tech site. That's our partner in China. So they distribute it for us, and they'll deal with all the shipping and everything else necessary for it.
Yep.
The other link is Zero Carbon World, which is in UK.
Yep.
They're a charity, and again, they'll ship it. I think, is it just UK or Europe? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think they probably would ship in Europe, because generally that's how things work over here in Europe. OVMS Zero Carbon World is slightly different to how it works at Fast Tech. On Zero Carbon World, you can go down the list and choose the vehicle that you have, and you can buy essentially a kit with everything that you need to connect your car to OVMS. So you see there's one here for the Leaf, one for the Twizy, Volt stroke Ampera, Tesla Roadster, and then there's a generic one at the bottom. If you go to Fast Tech, you buy the components bit by bit by bit, don't you? And if you click on this underneath where it says model, you can choose the bits that you need to add to your car. So let's pretend that we have got a Tesla Roadster and we want to set this up with OVMS, Mark. So you talk me through what I'll need to buy.
Okay, well, it's actually Tesla Roadster and everything else, so it's not too complicated. For any car, the first thing you need is the module. It sells for $99 US.
Okay, so let's click that and we'll add that to the cart.
Okay. The second thing you'll need is a way of connecting it to the car, and there are two ways. This is a Tesla Roadster cable, so you can see the cable basically connects to the vehicle port on the thing. If I actually stick this back on in place, you'll see that on the side of the module it has a port labeled vehicle, which I hope is visible.
Yep. And
so the cable basically plugs into that port. So this is the cable. If you have a Tesla Roadster, it has a special, like we call it the diode connector. So it's a kind of unusual car. So that's the cable if you're using a Tesla Roadster. Any other car pretty much uses ODB2.
Right, which is that one
that
there.
That is an OBD2 connector. So again, the open vehicles, the OVMS side is the same. It's just the car side is slightly different.
Right.
There are two variants of this OBD. It's very hard to say that OBD2 cable. One variant is this one, where it's actually, if we look at it that way around, where the cable is coming out the left-hand side,
Right.
and there's another variant where the cable comes out the right-hand side.
Right.
Really, you need to look at your car and see which, if it's going to plug in, which way would be the nicest way of doing it.
Yeah,
So
and
we call
it's
them
left and right.
Yeah, so we call them lefties and righties, and I think there doesn't seem to be a standard naming convention. So our
No.
convention is the smaller part of the connector is on the bottom. So
Right.
imagine that was going to plug in your car. If it was more convenient for the cable to head out the left side, then you'd buy the lefty. Otherwise, you'd buy the righty.
Now I've got the righty here, and I think we should point out these connectors. Finding them on your car, frustratingly, they're often hidden underneath the driver's steering wheel or somewhere in the footwell for the driver. On the Nissan Leaf, the early Nissan Leafs, it's almost directly under the steering column. On the more recent Nissan Leafs, you kind of see it. It comes in just to the right of the steering wheel. On the Ampere and the Volt, it's kind of, there's a couple of different places on that car that you can plug in, and then the Renault Twizy is hidden in the glove box, which is just bizarre.
I mean, the convention is actually specified in the legislation that you're supposed to sit in the driver's seat, and it is supposed to be within, I think, 2 feet of the driving steering wheel.
Well, there you go. That will explain why it's there.
Yeah, because the port is there for emissions control, but for EVs, there's obviously no emissions control, so they tend to be a bit more flexible, I think.
Well, I can see that becoming a fairly standard place for it to stay, though, because I think garages are fairly used to finding it there as well.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got the module now, and you've got the cable for your car. So as I say, there's 2 cables. One is the Tesla Roadster one, which is only for the Tesla Roadster, and then the OBD2 one is for pretty much every other car.
Although interestingly, someone said, I think I saw an email on the discussion list this week that someone said that the Model S has the same connector as the Roadster, but you don't officially support the Model S yet, do you?
Yeah, that's just started on that. Yes, it is actually the same connector, the same physical connector as the Roadster, but we haven't started the actual development work yet.
So the
Model S will be probably the same diag, but the Model S also has an OBD2 port, which we may use as well.
Crikey, that's crazy.
Yeah, the Tesla Roadster actually has an OBD2 port as well, but it's pretty much non-functional. It's just a dumb port that sits there doing nothing. Okay, the second thing you'll need is, as well as the vehicle port, if you can see, you've got 2 other ports here. One is marked GSM, and the other is marked GPS.
Now, what's the difference? Because most people look at GSM and they go, "Isn't that satellite navigation?"
Ah, yes. Okay, so GSM is the cellular connector, and GPS is the sat nav. So for a car which doesn't have, which OVMS doesn't support the GPS within the car, which is pretty much everything except for the Tesla Roadster, you will need a GPS antenna. And this is an example of the ones we sell. Very simple, but really any active GPS antenna will work.
Right. And it's this one here.
Yeah, and it plugs into the GPS port. Hey presto.
Lovely.
And you stick it somewhere with line of sight to the sky if possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Without a big piece of metal sitting above it if possible.
Yeah.
So that's the GPS. So that's required for pretty much every car again, apart from the Tesla Roadster.
Now that's only required. I suppose we should probably point it out. It's only required if you want to use the location finding capabilities of the software. So if you don't care where your car is, then you don't need it. But I think the nice thing about Open Vehicle Monitoring System is it's essentially it gives you a very nice vehicle tracker as well, especially if you hide it somewhere where no one's going to see it.
Yeah. And then the last one is the GSM antenna, which looks like this, but really you can use whichever one you want. it's got exactly the same connector, so you have to be careful which one
Right.
you plug where. It's very easy to get them around the wrong way around. So the GSM antenna plugs in like that, and it's this long, thin one.
And they come
It's
with
got,
sticky pads, don't they? So you can kind of stick them on things.
yeah, so they're very simple. You can stick them somewhere. Again, just somewhere it's visible. I mean, you can also get a combination antenna. I've seen some people use where the GPS and the GSM are in the same unit.
Oh wow.
We don't recommend that because if you look inside the module itself, this big, huge module sitting on it here, this big white thing.
This is the one that says SIM 908.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
SIM, is it? Oh yeah, I never realized that. Yes, that is that's kind of the equivalent to your cell phone. You know, that's the modem module we use, and the FCC regulation for that says you should basically should have its own antenna.
Right.
And the antenna should be a reasonable distance from your head. Pick your own demon, but I would say at least 18 inches from your head if possible.
Right.
Or from your passenger's head.
Right.
That said, I mean your cellular phone antenna is what, 2 inches from your head?
Yes, I was going to say it's quite close, isn't it? The question I have regarding this, regarding fitting this in your car is, I know some cars do come with like the antenna on the roof. You can actually get like a shark fin style antenna on the roof for improving your cell phone. You could do something like that if you maybe lived in an area with rubbish reception.
Yes, that's right.
Cool, excellent. So you've got your module, all your kit's arrived. You've got your module, you've got your aerials, you've got your SIM card, and you're ready to go. So the first thing I guess you need to do is open up OVMS, right? Open up the box because it doesn't come with a SIM card in it.
That's correct. Yes.
So how do we do that?
Okay, there are 4 screws, or 2 to 4 screws on the. So if this is the module, if you can see it, you'll find. I'll show you the back side. You'll find there's 4 screws, one on each corner. The easiest way to get into it is you'll see there's 2 sides of it. One side has got the antenna connectors and the vehicle connector.
Right.
The other has got a dia connector, which is mainly used for developers, and some indicator lights. The best way to get into it actually is from the antenna side, from the car, the vehicle, and the GSM GPS side. Just really because it slides out easier. So you undo those 4 screws. They are tiny little screws. Once you take those out, this little cover plate will come off.
Doing that here as well.
Yeah, and then you can just push from the other side.
Oh, so you can actually use this diag port to actually push it. It's not going to break it or anything.
That's right.
Okay.
And then then the module will slide out.
All right. Now I'm looking at this module here, and people, unless you're quite geeky, most people would look at this and have a bit of a conniption. They maybe worry about what all the different bits and bobs do. Are they going to break anything, etc., etc. Now I always say when you're handling circuit boards, I always tend to touch something metal just to ground myself. But do we have to worry about that with this, or?
You should, in theory. I've never had any problem with it.
Okay. Now there's a little switch on here. Obviously, we can see where the SIM card goes in, so we just pop our SIM card into the slot and then slide it in. And there's some grooves on here, isn't there, for the SIM card to slide in? It's just like putting one in your mobile phone. You can see.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard slot. Just make sure the SIM card is nicely seated, and once you've clicked it shut, make sure it's like centered.
And sorry, carry on.
Yeah, because the connectors, it's the SIM is not the most rigid standard. You just have to, you just have to make sure it's nicely seated in the center and it's not sliding up.
One of the things that I was going to say, Mark, was I know that some modern cell phone providers don't have the right network frequencies to work with this, because there are a couple of providers. I know I tried one in the UK. I tried 3 actually in the UK, and it wouldn't work with this module because it was working on a newer frequency or an older frequency. I'm not sure. There was a mismatch.
It should be pretty okay. I think it supports 3 or 4 frequencies.
Right.
So the problem may be because we're actually running it in 2G mode,
Right.
GPRS, because we really don't use a lot of data. You asked a question earlier, I didn't actually answer it. I think we use about, I can't remember the figure now. It's measured in kilobytes, not megabytes.
Yeah, let me log into mine, and I can tell you what my
I-
use has been.
I think if you had 1 or 2 megabytes a month, it would be plenty. It's really not a lot.
Okay, here we go. This is the cellular usage for my Chevy Volt. Over 22 days, which is almost a month, I've sent 0.32 megabytes,
So
and
300 kilobytes.
I've received 380 kilobytes. So that's insanely small, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work on it to reduce the amount of data which is required. So, if you have a 2 megabyte plan or whatever, I mean, Hong Kong, as I said, for $1.50, we get 50 megabytes, and we use about 1, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a prepay with a contract one with mine just because I'd much rather have it refresh and never have to worry about topping it up. But most people I know with this, they just use a prepay SIM card and put like 10 meg on it and then refresh it once a year or something.
Yeah. You normally run into the problem that the SIM card balance expires before you actually use it.
Right. So you put your SIM card in. There's a little switch on here. Do I need to do anything with that, or can I just put it straight back in and off I go?
Normally the easiest is to make sure it's slided towards the center of the board. This switch, if it's pointing outwards, it will limit the module just to GSM only, SMS control only. It will not do any GPRS data. If you slide it in and you have configured the GPRS, it'll then try to do the GPRS. The reason it's there is because if you configure the GPRS wrong, and it's trying hard to establish the GPRS, sometimes it's hard to get an SMS response. So the reason for the switch there is you can switch it up to SMS only mode, and then it's not going to use any data. It's not going to attempt to establish a network connection, etc. But for most users, you can just make sure it's towards the center of the board.
Okay, that's very cool. So I've got my SIM cards in. Let's pretend I've screwed. Well, I'll do this now. Let's screw it back up in. I'll put these screws in. So there's 4 screws, and you just need a small Phillips head screwdriver. There's little electronic screwdrivers you've got. I mean, that's what I'm using. A nice little set I got from Maplin in the UK, or Radio Shack in the US, and anywhere really that you can get those kind of places for. Just screw them back in, and then now I'm going to ask a silly question, and forgive me for asking these questions, because those of you who are watching this who know I've used OVMS before will wonder, why are you asking these questions? I'm being the dumb person today, and I'm asking the silly questions because for every person who's watching this who knows what we're talking about, there's probably one who goes, what? I don't understand it. They may not feel that they can ask these questions. So, can I now take this outside, plug it in my car, and have it work, Mark?
Not quite.
Okay, so what's next?
Okay, let's go through it. Just going to try to load it up on my screen. Maybe if you can go to the openvehicles.com site.
Yes, yeah, let me go to that now. Let me go to this. So let me go to my screen share. Here we go. So I'm going to go to the openvehicles.com website. Now I'm using a Windows machine here. That's because I'm running it in a virtual system. But I mean, I normally use a Mac, so either of these would work. So I've gone to the Open Vehicles website here. Yeah.
If you scroll down to the OVMS links,
okay,
you can see there's some really nice little links here to help you out.
All right, let's go. What's a Git? It's a GitHub. Is that somewhere I want to hang out?
GitHub. As I said, it's a community project, so that the GitHub is the source code. So all the source code for OVMS is published, and we maintain it out there in the open. So you can, if you're a hobbyist or a developer, which is a large number of our users are, you can take the source code, change it however you want, and hopefully contribute back to the project.
Right, and
your extensions.
Some of the people who've done this. I mean, there's a guy in Norway, I think, who's taken the OVMS hardware that we were just talking about and added a bit of extra wiring to it so that he can turn on the heater in his Think City.
Yeah, I think that Norway are concerned with preheating quite drastically.
Wonder why, with all that cold snow.
Yeah. So what they've done, actually on the board, I don't know if you can see with my board, but there's an expansion connector up here. So basically all the unused pins from the controller we output. So he's basically using those pins to turn on and off parts of his car.
Wow, that's clever. That's very clever.
It's quite cool.
Going back to GitHub, I mean, obviously, if you're a coding person, you'll understand some of this. If you're not, it makes interesting reading. There's some documentation in here that tells you kind of some basics. So everything we're covering here today is covered in documentation on the GitHub as well. So let's go back to the website. We've got these other things here.
Okay, so following on from GitHub, we've got the firmware easy install. That's a good question. I'm not even sure where that links to now. Okay, this is Tom Saxton. He has a guide on how to update the firmware.
Right. And Tom's a great person. He's been on the show lots on the Transport Evolved network before. He was due to join us today, so I hope he's okay. Maybe he'll join us later on.
Okay. So that's his, how to update the firmware in the module if you want new support for new vehicles or just new features, etc. Then we've got two user guides. We've got the Roadster user guide and a Twizy user guide.
Right. Now, these two cars are probably the most supported, aren't they, in terms of features? So the Roadster user guide, I think if you click on that, it downloads. There you go. Downloads the version of the user guide, so we can open that. And it's quite a tome, isn't it?
Yes.
Very comprehensive, though. It does tell you exactly what you need to do.
Yeah. Although even though they say Roadster and Twizy, for the other cars you can pretty much use the same user guides. The only difference is going to be where you actually plug it in the car.
Right.
But the other parts of the user guide are all the same.
Now the Twizy and the Roadster user guides are worth downloading if you have those cars because they do add extra bits. And again, I don't think anybody would mind me saying there's one of the Twizy people who've got the open vehicle monitoring system at the moment. They have figured out a way to change some of the parameters of the motor. They're trying to toy with that at the moment to make the car change the car's throttle response, etc., etc. That's still in the development stage at the moment. But I mean, just scrolling down the OVMS website, you can see that quite a lot of stuff's been done with Twizy in the past. Someone figured out how to automate the Twizy so that it turned itself off when it reached a certain charge level, because that doesn't come as standard with the car. This is a post I did actually about playing with OVMS and tracking the car and figuring out what my energy usage was, etc., etc. So, there's lots of important extra bits and bobs that you can do from there. Anyway, let's go on. We've got the GeoSim guide here, Mark.
So the GeoSim is that, again, it's a partner. We don't have any relationship with them. We just recommend their product. It's a SIM card that works anywhere in the world. Very simple, but it's primarily data only.
Right.
I think the only place the SMS on it would really work effectively would be UK.
Right.
So the GeoSim is an option as a SIM card. If you have a local SIM that you're comfortable with, you can use that, or you can just use the GeoSim, which will work anywhere around the world.
Right.
Okay.
So if you, it's worth using GeoSim if you happen to be someone who thinks you're going to be making lots of trips across the border, rather than just staying in one country. Then you've got the iOS app and the Android app. Now I've got both of them here. If I can show you I've got one on my iPhone, and also I've got one on an Android on a Amazon Kindle that I've hacked as well. So you click on those links and it will go to the app stores for both platforms.
That's correct. Yeah. So you can just search for open vehicles on the App Store. You'll find it.
Great. So that's and you can see some of the screenshots for the iOS version. and again, you can see some for the the Android version as well. Now, you don't when you say obviously it's open source. Do you welcome people helping with the development of the apps as well as the hardware and the firmware for the cars?
Absolutely. If you click that GitHub link on the
here we go. Let's go to
on
the
the
GitHub
home page, you'll see there we've got the Open Vehicle monitoring system, which is the first one. So that's the firmware that goes in the car.
Right.
We've also got a project called CAN Retool, which is used for reverse engineering the communications in cars. We've got Open Vehicle Android, Open Vehicle iOS is all there. So the source code, everything is up there, published.
Fantastic. So people can really play if they want to. Oh.
Yeah.
All right, and then we've got the vehicle support, and then the development mailing list. Now, obviously, the development mailing list is what it says on the tin. If you are a developer and you want to discuss OVMS or talk about any ideas, it's just a mailing list, isn't it, that you can subscribe to. And vehicle support.
You can click it. This actually we want to expand because the number of vehicles we've supported has increased. But you can basically see here the vehicles we support and the version of firmware you'd require, and also links to the different components you'd need.
Right. Now the version that we've got at the moment is version. The hardware is version 2, isn't it?
Yes.
And the version number of the software, the latest, is version 2.2.2.
It's 2.5 now.
2.5. Right.
Yeah, it just means 2.2 or later is So with version 2.2, we added support for that particular vehicle.
Okay, so we've talked about the website a little. We've got our hardware module. We really want to plug it into our car. What do we need to do next?
Okay, so let's work through that manual we have. And the first thing you need to do is on the website go and register an account.
Okay, we'll do that right now. So we're going to create a new account. All right, so we're going to let's create an account here, and we're going to call this Transport Evolved, and put in transportevolved.com. Now we're going to pick a vehicle type. Now it asks you, tells us what do you have to put in your car? Is that how it works? Oh,
yes. Sorry. As an aside, Tom is asking how to get into the Hangout.
Let me see if I can invite him in. You keep talking us through this, and I'll see if I can
he actually posted it to the OVMS developers list. If you got your email for that, anyway. Yeah. So let's talk about now what we design here. So what we need here is a username and an email address and a password for the Open Vehicle site. So this username and account here is used as like an umbrella to hold all the information on all the vehicles which belong to you. So it's asking you for a username you want. You choose your own, your email address, and then it wants to know for your profile a vehicle type and a TMC or other forum username. This really is just to reduce the amount of spam as we get signing up. So if you type in AAABBB, your account will probably be refused. If you type in anything which resembles a vehicle and a forum username which has more than 2 different letters, you will be accepted.
Excellent. Excellent.
And there's also a captcha which tries. I mean, it's just annoying these spammers who just try to create forum accounts so they can leave messages. It's a pain in the neck.
Excellent.
So you don't need to be a TMC member. Just Okay. Can you scroll down a bit?
I can. One second. Yeah. Let me see if I can scroll down. There we go.
So I think you're going to need to put a TMC forum user. You can just write Nikki, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't.
Right. Okay. And then you have to put in the captcha stuff here.
Yep.
Which is, so what's that? Excellent. And then. All right. So we create a new account. That's going to give me. So in a second it will be approved by the administrator, and then once you've logged in.
So you've created the account now. It needs to be approved. We do that, but again, it's purely as for the forum's point of view. I'm not actually sure if you can, at this point, can you try to create a vehicle record?
Let's have a look. I don't think it's going to let me log in at the moment. It's
It wants you to approve. Okay, let me just approve it anyway.
right. Password field.
So one of the admins on the system can approve the account.
Okay.
Yeah, the easiest way is actually where even before you order the hardware, just create the account on the site, and then you won't have to delay. If it takes a few hours for your account to be approved, it's not a problem. You'll get the account approved before the hardware arrives in the mail. Put it that way.
I'm just trying to send a message to Tom so he knows what went wrong.
Okay. I think JC is asking the same question, actually.
Okay, let me see. Let's see if I can send some invites. I did send some invites, which is a bit bizarre, really. Let's see if I can add some extra users. I don't. Oh, here we go. Let me. Maybe if they can send me their Tom Saxton. Tom. All right. So you keep talking, and I'm going to add these extra people into my list.
Okay. So I think while you're talking about this, I will go through the sort of the terminology, because there are quite a few. I mean, we are potentially there's privacy issues here. So we have passwords and usernames, etc., to protect different parts of the system. So let me go through the terminology of what we have. So the first thing we have is the Open Vehicles username and password. So that's the account on www.openvehicles.com, which contains your vehicle records for the servers. If you're going to use your own server, you don't need that account. You do whatever you want. But if you're going to use the Open Vehicles and the Tesla Motor Club.com server, then you would set up an account there. Okay. The second terminology we have is a vehicle ID.
Right.
A vehicle ID is just like a username, but for your vehicle. So you might have several vehicles, each has an OVMS module in it, and they all group together under your account. So you can register a vehicle, but you need to come up with a name or a nickname for the vehicle called the vehicle ID.
Let me log into this now, because I've logged into my own personal account now. So I should be able to show you
the other account is that the other account's also approved, so you can create a vehicle there if you want to try.
Excellent. So I am. If I go to my account, there we go, and then these are my two here. I don't mind people seeing that. So I can go to vehicles. Let's register an open vehicle. Let's just make one up, shall we?
Yeah.
So let's do marks.
You put in
marks.
I think just letters and numbers, no spaces.
Okay, no spaces, no underscores. Can we do underscores?
Maybe it should work.
Let's try. OVMS vehicle nickname. So OVMS1. OVMS vehicle telephone number. It asks for this, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can do that because we have a thing, particularly for GeoSim. We have where the SMS messages cost you money. We have a SMS provisioning from the website. So if you're going to do that, you can put in the telephone number. It's not required. The fields with the little asterisks next to them in red are required.
Okay.
So that's purely optional. And then you can choose the server you want to use. We just recommend leaving it as all servers, so you could use any server.
Okay. So now I've filled that out.
Yeah, and then this field here, the OVMS server password. So that is the password which the apps, the server, and the vehicle are all going to know about. So you type it in twice, and that password is what provides the security between the server, the vehicle, and the apps, so they all can authenticate each other and can encrypt the data.
Great.
So that's your second password. So your first password is the Open Vehicles username and password. That's for the website. The second is each vehicle has a OVMS server password. So
right, so there's a module password and a server password.
Yes. So, well, we've got the username and the account and the account password here. Now we've got the server password, and then the third one is the module password. So the module password is just known to you and the module in the car. It's not known to the server at all.
Right.
And you use that for SMS if you want to use a new phone or whatever, and that allows you to control the module. And we also have a paranoid mode where the data is encrypted, so even the server can't see it.
So I can edit my vehicles here. I click on edit, and that's obviously my details as well.
Yeah.
So if I click on, I can change the vehicle. I can change what it's various things about the vehicle and go from there. So you've got your account. Let's pretend we did fill in this password here. Then we will be able to click on one of these buttons, which allows us to provision the vehicle, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's if you're going to use SMS provisioning. So if you click on it, I can show you what you fill in.
Okay. Oops. All right.
So here I should point out that we're a community project. So when you actually click this up, you'll get a little donate button here, which you're free to use or not. It really doesn't cost us a lot of money. It's a few cents every time we send an SMS. Basically, because there's no charge here. We're going to send the SMS on your behalf, and we'll swallow the cost. So if you just do it once, don't bother. If you find yourself doing it a few times, we would appreciate a small donation, a couple of US dollars or whatever.
Yep. So you put in the vehicle telephone number.
Yep.
And then you put in your password for the module.
Yeah.
And then what's this registered user telephone number thing here?
Okay, so that is the telephone number for your cellular telephone.
Right. And why do we need to put that in?
If you're going to use SMS to control the car, we allow one registered owner phone, so your mobile phone, for instance. And if the control message comes from that phone, then it's allowed without a password. Otherwise, you have to specify the password every time.
Right. So it's like it's like having a slightly easier way of gaining access to your system without having to do the password every time. Typing in the password on a mobile device is not very fun anyway, is it?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so that's our user telephone, and then
let's go through the other things it asks for. So it asks for the firmware version. Nowadays, everything is 1.36 onwards, so it's
right or later, right? Okay, and then it says miles.
We're up to 2.5 point something now, so it's
right.
But it can support the very, very old firmware.
And then we've got units, miles or kilometers, which I think is probably self-explanatory.
Yep.
Depending on which country you're in.
Yep. Next one down, notification preferences. You can choose for the system. It has things like if a charge is interrupted, so you're charging your EV and somebody unplugs you or a circuit breaker trips, it'll send you a message.
Right.
And those notification messages, you can choose either to be SMS to you. The module itself will SMS it to the registered telephone, or you can choose IP, which means it'll send it to a smartphone app, or both.
Right. Now, if you are using a data SIM and you don't want to get the SMS messages, then obviously you can leave it like that, IP. Or if you want to have SMS and internet, then you can use SMS IP. I guess it depends whether you're going to be using this system with a smartphone or not. I guess this is a good point of mentioning the functionality of Open Vehicle Monitoring System depends on what vehicle you've got, but it also depends on what you're trying to use it with. Now, we talked about Android and Apple devices. There are apps available for both the Android operating system and Apple's iOS, but you can also use this with just a dumb feature phone with an SMS capability, right?
Yes, that's right.
It just requires a little bit more, what should we say, understanding of what code you need to send to get the information to come back. But if you've just got a feature phone and you haven't got a smartphone, then you click it SMS instead of IP. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
What's this replacement module password?
So the default module password when you flash the module, you receive it in the post is OVMS, which is obviously not very secure. So you can choose to change the password here if you want to.
So, and obviously it's recommended you do that because otherwise everybody knows your module password.
Yeah, or leave it blank. I mean, they'd actually also, as well as the module password, they'd need to know the telephone number of the module as well.
Right.
To be able to do anything. So it's still fairly secure.
And then you've got the OVMS server, which I think we've already covered.
Okay, so that address there is the Tesla Motor Club server, sponsored server,
right?
Which we're very grateful for them. The next one asked for is the OVMS server password. So that is the same password as you just entered when you created the vehicle records. That's the server password.
Right.
You put it in twice.
And then we've got something called paranoid mode.
Okay, so I mentioned that because we're very concerned with privacy here, and particularly the location is shown for the car. You know, your battery status I don't think is very private, but I wouldn't be too worried about somebody knowing how much power I got in my battery. But things like location and be able to unlock the doors, etc., in some vehicles, it has some privacy concerns. So paranoid mode, the way it works is in the normal mode, not paranoid, it will use the server password, which is known by the vehicle module, the server, and the apps. And the data will be authenticated and encrypted using that password. But in theory, then, whoever operates the server can look at the data flying backwards and forwards. So there are privacy issues. So paranoid mode basically double encrypts the data, but this time it uses the module password, which is not known by the server. So in that case, the server is just acting as a relay. All the server does is, it gets an encrypted message, which it just passes on to the apps, and then the apps will actually have to do the decryption.
Okay.
So for debugging, we normally recommend you just leave paranoid mode off while in the initial setup until everything's working properly, because it does mean if you do have a problem, the people who operate the server can help you. If it's encrypted, there's very little we can do to help because it's all encrypted. It's garbage from what we see.
Okay.
And then later on, you can turn on paranoid mode if you're paranoid or concerned about the server.
Great.
It really doesn't do much from the protection of the data from either the cellular network or your smartphone. It's purely whether you trust the server or not. Yeah.
Okay. And then we've got these social groups.
Yes. The social groups you can put here, or you can put them in the apps later anyway. The social groups basically will broadcast your location to those groups, and anybody who knows the group name can see the location. So they're kind of nice, fun things, particularly if you've got to get together. If you've got a group of EVs going on a drive together or something, you can create a social group for it. Just put in, Christmas drive, and anybody who knows the group name can see where all the cars are in that group.
That's sweet. That's very nice. And could you use that also to hook things out? I mean, talking quite geekily now. If you wanted to pipe your location out to some other app, but you didn't want that app to have access to everything, you could presumably use this to broadcast it?
That's correct, yes. So the social group's nice. I mean, one use we had is there was a Rafael de Maestro, who drove his Tesla Roadster around the world. He was using OVMS to broadcast and using the social group feature.
That is sweet. That is very sweet. All right, so then we've got Cellular GPS. Now, this is something we probably do need to explain quite carefully.
Yeah. So this is the final username and password. So I think somebody mentioned in total there were 4. So this is the final one. So this is the GPRS APN, GPRS user, and GPRS password are all related to the SIM card which you choose. So they are actually provided, or should be provided, by the cellular provider, whoever gave you that SIM card or whoever you purchased the SIM card from. And there are sites. I mean, if you use Vodafone in Germany, if you type into Google Vodafone Germany GPRS APN, you'll come to a site which tells you what the APN username and password should be.
Okay, well that should give you a fairly easy way of finding that information, and then you just copy and paste into there.
Yeah.
Now the GPRS user and pass depends on, again, like like you said, it depends on the provider. And what's this last thing? This GSM provider lock.
That one you typically steer clear of unless you really know what you're doing, because things can go bad if you do it wrong. So
Okay.
typically leave it blank. But
Leave it blank.
it's kind of like on your cell phone, you have a I can't explain it. It's network. What do they call it on the Apple? Hang on, look it up. Cellular Provider, is it, or carrier?
Yes.
Yeah. So on the iPhone they call it carrier under the settings menu, and it's automatic. That's what it would be if you leave it blank. So that just means that it will look at the SIM, and the SIM will try to find the best carrier it can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or the one with the best signal, or the one it prefers. It has a priority rating. You can turn it to manual, and then you can choose a particular cellular provider. Okay, so for instance, the only reason you'd really want to do that is that if you have a roaming SIM, like a GeoSim, sometimes some providers are much more expensive than others. For instance, in US, AT&T is the cheapest, and I think T-Mobile is almost 10 times the price.
Ooh,
for data.
Ow.
So you would, in that case, you would lock the card just to use AT&T. So you would set the provider to AT&T in that case. But you need to know the exact provider name, which you can find out from the apps once it's locked on.
Okay.
But so that's really what that's used for, is to force it to connect to a particular provider. As a side effect, it's also slightly quicker to connect.
Okay. All right. So once you've filled this all in, you can click SMS provision, and it will send a text message to your SIM card in your car.
Yep.
Which presumably by this point you've actually plugged in. Is that the best way of doing it? Go out and plug it into your car. And then if everything works, what happens next?
If everything works, the module will come online, will connect to the server, and be available for you to use.
Right, and then if you if I switch screens here for a second, if I show you here, well, I've just realised my watch is still connected. If I show you here, you can see that there is a this is my volt, and it shows the battery is fully charged. We haven't driven it today. It shows you the ideal range, and obviously you have to enter in the module details and the server details into the app. But once you've done it on this site, it kind of then explains itself again, doesn't it, for entering into the app. And you can see where the location of the car is. That shows on Google Maps where my car is, and messages that you've received from the car. So these are all the messages that I've received from the car. Charging stopped, charging done, etc., etc. So it's a really good way of figuring out how much you've charged your car as well. So I can see here, charging done 98% on January 2nd. And it gives me on my ideal range and my estimated range for my vehicle. Now, on the Chevy Volt, you can't actually control the car with the app yet. But on the Tesla Roadster, you can actually tell it to charge, can't you, using the app? A bit like CarWings for the Nissan Leaf.
Yeah, that's right. You can start and stop the charge.
Start and stop the charge. You can set how much, how the charging current. You can set that.
Yeah.
On the Nissan Leaf at the moment, which is in development, all you can really see at the moment is the state of charge of the battery pack and where the car is, a bit like the Volt. But I wouldn't advocate anybody gets this for Nissan Leaf yet, because it's not production, it's not ready for mainstream yet. The Renault Twizy, at the moment, you can see where your Twizy is. You can see the state of charge, and soon, hopefully, you'll be able to do some other things as well. And of course, all the other vehicles that are used as well. I don't know if there's anything we've missed, Mark. Obviously, you've done the SMS provisioning on the portal here. It's also possible to provision your car using a cell phone. But I would advise that's a little harder, isn't it?
I don't know. I find it easier, but
You find it easier. Okay, so
yeah, that one is a sort of fire and forget. If it all works, it's easy, but it's very hard to get feedback of a problem. I think it's worth talking now for a little bit about how there's three main ways of finding out what the status is.
okay.
So let's talk about those three ways if I can. Um, the first way is you can look at the module itself, and you'll see on the module it's got two LEDs, a green and a red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they will blink out codes, and you got to be you have to sort of get used to it because they blink them
Mm-hmm.
quite quick. And typically the green is the status, and the red is the error. Okay, and in an ideal world, the green will, well, when you switch it on, first of all, they'll both come on, and then it'll blink out the version of software. So you'll get like 2 green,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then 5 green, and then 5 green, and that'll tell you it's 2.5.5.
Excellent.
So
I just want to interrupt you here and say Tom Saxton's joined the Hangout as well. Hello, Tom.
Hey guys.
We're sorry that we missed you at the beginning there. I don't know quite what that was about, why it didn't get sent through, but you're here now, which is a good thing. So Mark was just telling us about what the different ways that you could see the status of the vehicle and communicate with it, right?
Yeah.
So carry on, please.
Okay. So these LEDs, I mean, after that initial startup, both the LEDs will go off for 10 seconds. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's clear. At that point, the green LED will start at a number at 10, so it'll start blinking 10 times.
Right.
And hopefully it'll go all the way down to 2 or 1. 2 it will be just SMS, and 1 will be it's connected to the server and everything's working perfectly.
Now is that's a green flashing?
Green LED.
Right.
So in an ideal world, you would see maybe 10 blinks, and then
Right.
it goes quite quickly. So you might not see 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You might see 10, 6,
Right.
3, 1.
Okay.
So but basically, if it's sitting there blinking, 1 green,
Uh-huh.
1 green, it's connected to the server. It's happy from the
Right.
from the car point of view.
Right.
If it gets to 2 greens, that means it's connected at the SMS level, so it's not
Right.
connected to the server. So that either means you've either got the switch in the wrong place. If you switch the switch up here, pointing upwards or outwards, it will stop at SMS, and you'll only ever get two green blinks.
Right. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
The most common ones we see are 6 green, which is what we call COPS, which is basically looking for cellular signal. And if it sits at 6 and doesn't, and then sort of tries for a while and then resets and goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 and resets 10, 9, and can't get below 6, that typically means you've got it can't connect to the network for some reason. It can't
Right.
connect to this cellular provider. So the thing to check most common is the GSM connector.
Okay. Now, one of the things I've also found, because I've had this happen a couple of times. I live in one of those areas where my cell phone signal is not great. I mean, I can show you right now on my phone. I've got one blob on my iPhone right now, and very often I've helped a couple of people get OVMS running at home. One of the things I say is, can you just go drive for 10 minutes around the area, and sometimes you'll find you'll pick up a cell phone signal, and when you get back you'll be able to tell. That works for me. Tom, I don't know if you've got any tips about trying to get the signal, finding a signal.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I get a good signal in my garage, so.
Well, that's a good place to start. All right, so once you've got those lights have gone down, Mark, assuming they've gone down, it's all working. But what happens if they don't work? What if we've got red lights?
The number of you can check the manual, but the number of green blinks will give you a good indication of how far it got. And if you look in the manual, I think it's page 14, it describes the lights. So like 6 is trying to get connection to the cellular network. 3 is it's actually trying to connect to the server, and 2 and 1 are success, basically.
Right.
In addition, the red will give you some indication of what the last error was.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be a little bit wary of that, because sometimes, I mean, this is cellular data, it's radio networks, there's lots of errors.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you get a red one doesn't mean actually something's broken. It just means it has to reset, or it has a problem connecting to the cellular or whatever,
Okay.
The cell tower's busy or whatever,
Okay, so you just would you say sort of give it half an hour or something? Is that a sensible thing to do?
5 minutes maximum.
5 minutes.
Your advice of going for a drive to somewhere where you got a good signal is a very good idea.
Yeah, and when you get back, you should still have a signal, and your
Yeah.
lights should have stopped counting down and flashing.
Yeah. So the other way, if you got that's the first way of checking. The other way, if you got SMS access, so maybe the SMS works but the network doesn't, you can send SMS commands for status. There's one called diag. You can type it. You can send it a server question mark. It'll tell you how the server connection is, and it gives you a lot of good information there.
I'm just laughing because my wife, who is a developer coder as well, is next door, and has just sent an apology for apparently shouting out an expletive in celebration of achieving of fixing a bug in her programming. She said, "Sorry to a minor journey and all those in her Google Plus Hangout for my outburst. If you program, you'll understand." So now people will be rewinding to try and find it. Let's send an SMS message now. I'm going to send one from my phone, Mark. And one of the things I would recommend, I don't know if you do, is I actually save my phone as a contact in my iPhone. So here we go. So I've saved my car as a contact. What should I send? What command should I send for my first command?
Just send it stat, S-T-A-T. I like that one.
Do I have to do it as capitals?
No, don't think so.
Okay, so here we go. So S-T-A-T, whoops, S-T-A-T, and let's see what happens. Oh, of course it would help if I entered it into the right thing here. I'm feeling very old. Right, stat, send. Let's see what happens. So I've sent that. Sending. And then
With your one bar?
With my one bar. I'm in the studio. But my studio is a bit of a Faraday cage because I've got all this equipment in here. So I never know if it's actually my studio or where we live. But here we go. It says not charging. It's responded. Not charging. SOC 100%. Ideal range 40 miles. Estimated range 40 miles. So that's a standard one, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay. What else can I do with this?
You can. Quite a fun one is you can do GPS. You can send a
GPS, and does it then return my GPS coordinates?
It'll give you a little link, so it'll give you like a URL which you can click. Great.
So if somebody wants to know where you are, with a text message, here it goes, car location, and then it gives me a Google Maps link which I can click on, and then it opens it up in Google Maps or in a web browser, and then it gives me long and lat. It's great. It shows exactly where my car is, and it's right as well, which is a good thing.
Yeah. So you'll find if you actually write in or send to support@openvehicles.com saying I can't get my OVMS working, the first thing we always ask for is we ask you to, what is your vehicle ID? And please can you send the following SMS messages and give us the output? And we ask for module question mark, GPRS question mark, server question mark. We ask for all those because normally the response from the user then is, oh, I just found out the password was wrong.
Yes.
So it's partly it's a double check that the password entered is correct, and I think that solves about 75% of connection problems. Is one of these 4 passwords has been put in incorrectly, and the user normally realizes it themselves once they type in the SMS and get the response back.
Now you can actually set this up, can't you, from scratch, having just put the SIM card in the module and then put the module in the car. You can actually set up your connection, your internet connection, and also your SMS connections, just using SMS messages, can't you? So if you don't want to use the SMS provisioning service, and I guess the first thing you need to do is send a register command.
Yeah. So you register you say register space and then the password. The default is OVMS. The module password, that is, and that will register your phone as the owner, and then you can then send the setup commands.
Okay, so as long as no one's going to prank your phone and send a register command first. In case. Okay, so
And then there's one more way which you can check the status, which was asked. Somebody suggested we talked about this, which is the app itself. So
Right.
when you're setting up the app, you install the app, you put in the same information. It requires the vehicle ID, a nickname, the server password, and the module password.
Mm-hmm.
And you choose a pretty picture of your car or the closest one available.
Yeah.
And then you look at the status page of it, and you'll see a blinking antenna. And
Right.
everybody asks, what does that mean?
Okay.
So let's go
Let's see if I
through.
can see this.
There's
I've got my
3
Android
colors.
version here. Hopefully we can see that.
I'll show you the iPhone. If I run it on my iPhone here, I think
Yeah.
you can probably see.
There we are. Fantastic.
So you can see in the top right of the screen, there's a blink. There's an antenna indicator,
Mm-hmm.
and mine is blinking red at the moment. Okay. So let's go through what those are. The first is a blinking gray. Blinking gray means that the app is trying to connect to the server, and that shouldn't last very long because it's going over the internet. It should be very, very quick. Within 1 or worst case 10 seconds, it should change from gray. But if it doesn't leave gray, most likely either the server is down, which is very unlikely because
Right.
the server is incredibly reliable, or you've put in the wrong password or whatever into the app. Okay.
Okay.
So once you get past gray, it'll go either green or red. Red would be if the car is not connected to the server and hasn't been connected for a long time, like an hour or so. And
Right.
it'll also give you a time where it last saw the car. So for instance, on mine at the moment, it's giving me a red 70 minutes. So that means just an hour and 10 minutes that was the last time the car managed to connect. That's because my driveway has got terrible cellular signal. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
The other option is green. If it's green, that means, well, the car has recently sent information to the server, and it'll give you a time, say 15 minutes. So that means the information you're looking at now in the app is 15 minutes old.
Right.
But if it's, for most cases, it's good enough. Like your battery is not going to change much in 15 minutes. And then what actually happens is when the app connects to the server, it sends the information which it last had from the car, but it also tells the car, hey, there's an app connected now. So the car will then, within a few seconds, the car should send the latest information, and you'll see the flashing antenna then becomes a solid green, and it'll the data age will say live.
Mm-hmm. So mine here. Sorry, carry on.
If I choose a different car, like this one, this is a friend's car.
It's a very trusting friend, Mark.
Yes. Let's pick I'll pick a demo. I think the demo car is probably easier. Yeah. So you can see the demo car will show, if I can show it. Okay, if I can somehow find it. There we go. So that gives us a green with the word live.
Right.
So in normal way, what you should see is you run the app, it should be a flashing gray for a very short time while it connects to the server, then most likely flashing green, saying maybe 10 minutes, and then a few seconds later the green will go solid, it'll say live. Okay. That's what you should expect to see.
Now, let's talk about coverage for a second. Let's bring Tom in on this. Now, Tom, you've been using OVMS since the early days of the first generation, haven't you? The first generation hardware.
I have, yeah.
I'm absolutely astonished at how good the cellular reception is with OVMS kit. I mean, this stuff here outperforms my phone every time in terms of you know where it is. I don't think I've ever been in a position where it's not picked up a signal for very long. Have you had any problems? Because you're in Washington, aren't you?
Yeah. So in my garage, my car tends to get more consistent reception than my phone does. And for a while, I was using T-Mobile, and when I was out in the boonies, it seemed like that had trouble getting reception. But then I switched to AT&T, and it's been super reliable since then.
Great. I know that Tom, you've still got the first generation hardware, haven't you, rather than the second generation hardware?
No, I've upgraded to the second
generation.
generation. Yeah.
Right, and it's just as good, isn't it, in terms of reception?
Oh yeah. Same. Yeah. I use the same antenna install, so yeah, unplugged the one and plugged in the other, and it's worked great.
Now, Mark, if someone has problems with their reception, that's another thing to talk about on the forum, isn't it? On the news group, because people can suggest a SIM that will work with them in their area.
Yes, I mean the easiest is to hop on the forums or whatever and ask the question, or it's quite frankly, if you're not a very experienced technical girl, the best is to find somebody, an OVMS user in your area or in your language that can help out. And we've got them all over the world. You can normally find someone fairly close by who will help you out.
Yeah, I mean we've talked previously about upgrading your firmware, because being an open source project, the firmware is often is not often, but it's fairly regularly updated, and you can have something here, can't you, Tom, called a pick kit, which I've got right here. Oh, and I dropped mine. But you've got this thing called a pick kit that you can use to reflash the program that's running on the unit. That's probably the best way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
But to be honest, I would say, and I'm sure Mark, you probably say this as well. You don't really need this, do you? I mean, once you've got this piece of kit up and running, you don't really need to upgrade it for any reason, unless you want extra functionality, right?
Well, that's the thing, is the extra functionality. So we do recommend people get a pick kit, because I mean the module is $99 US, and I think the pick kit is 10 or 15. I can't remember. It's not a huge amount of money. Right. If you get it at the same time in the module, you don't pay for shipping, right? And it's just easier. Then if you need to update the firmware later, you can. Okay. Now, if you don't have it, then you can't.
Now, Tom, we've done a brief. I've done a brief thing before, talking people through updating the firmware on the unit. Do you want to jump in now and give people a kind of a 50,000-foot level on that one?
Yeah. So you already talked about the link on the OVMS page that links to my firmware update page, and that has the instructions for how to do it. And basically, what you do is you go to that page and you take your board out of your box, you plug it into the gizmo, and then you download the latest firmware. There's a link on that page that lets you do that, and then you run this program and you follow the instructions there, and it blasts the new firmware down to your board, and then you put it back in the car.
Yep. And the only thing I would say at that point is there's one thing you have to click on the actual program to remember to save your own user data on the bit of on the OVMS before you flash new stuff on it. Otherwise, you'll have to re-provision it from scratch, which is what we were talking about with Mark a few minutes ago. The other thing is obviously make sure the triangle goes to the triangle on the board, doesn't it? That's the only other thing to bear in mind. So, from all the other thing to bear in mind is to download the firmware, as we discovered last time, is not best from GitHub, is it, Mark?
No, I'd use Tom's page. It's much better.
So, Tom, you basically take the firmware from GitHub and host it on your site, don't you?
Actually, I just grab the proper GitHub link.
Right.
And so you don't have to dig down into the bowels of the GitHub project to find the files, and it just pulls it straight out for you.
And then it saves it onto your hard drive. Can anybody? I mean, Mac, Linux, Windows. Is there any particular machine you need?
I do it. I'm a Mac guy, but I've been doing the firmware download from Windows. Mm-hmm. There's not an easy PickKit 2 software for the Mac.
Right.
And I think there's a command line version, which if you're running Linux, then you're probably not going to be afraid of the command line, and you can do it that way.
Right. And I'll show you now. See if I can do this. I'm going to show you my entire desktop. Here you go. So this is my Mac here, and if I just minimize that, you'll see this is actually a Windows Parallels Bootcamp running on Parallels desktop. So I use a virtual machine, and it will run in any version of Windows, won't it, Mark? pretty much.
Yeah, I think it's anything reasonably recent.
Right. Cool.
I use Windows XP, which is not reasonably recent, and it works fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yes. Whatever you do, don't upgrade to. I shouldn't say this. Don't upgrade to Windows 7 or 8 because it's not very good. 7 was all right. 8's a bit of a letdown. But once it's on there. You can't really take it off. We've covered installing the unit. We've covered provisioning it. Mark, some basic commands, and kind of using it on an everyday basis. Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Not really sure. Vehicles, I guess. What do we support at the moment?
Okay, so Tesla Roadster is I suppose, probably one of the most highly supported ones, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for all the basic vehicles, we'll support things like the battery status and the location. So that's sort of the minimum, and possibly temperature. I think you'd include as the minimum.
Okay.
The temperature of the battery, the temperature of the electronics, etc. So pretty much all the supported vehicles support that. And then on top of that, we have functions like starting charge, stopping charge. Or the Twizy's got a lot of stuff on the details of down to the. I don't know what they call it on the Twizy. Is it brick or not quite? But it's
Yeah, you can. I mean, on the Twizy, certainly, from when I had it, you had everything from the motor speed to the voltage of the batteries to, you could produce a huge. I mean, I actually did a graph, pulled all this data out and then put a graph up. And actually, maybe that's one of the things that you can do. If you're maybe on the really geeky side, pulling data back. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you can actually pull data from the OVMS server using a command line interface and just pulling that information back. So then there's a Twizy. There's the Vauxhall Ampera Chevy Volt. Now, if you're in America and you're watching this, you're going, yeah, but I've got OnStar. The thing you might not know is that OnStar only exists in North America. It doesn't exist anywhere else, at least on the Volt or the Ampera. So if you've got a Chevy Volt in Europe, or you have a Vauxhall Ampera or Opel Ampera, the European version of the Volt. Our cars don't have any kind of integrated OEM telematics systems. So, we can't unlock our car remotely, as I discovered a couple of months ago when I accidentally locked my smart keys in the trunk. There's just this tiny sliver of space in the back of a Chevy Volt trunk where you can actually lock the keys in the car because it doesn't detect that there are keys in that if it's far enough, close enough to the rear of the vehicle. So you can't unlock your vehicle and get your keys back out. You can't check on the status of the charging. You can't precondition it unless you've got the key. So that's why OVMS support was added, wasn't it, for the Volt?
Yes. The Volt and the Ampera, I think.
And the Ampera, yeah. Same car.
Internally, it's pretty much the same.
Now, it's worth mentioning that when you connect your vehicle to OVMS, you have to tell it what vehicle you've got, whether it's there's a two-letter code, isn't there, Mark?
Yeah. So let's I'll cover that now, actually. Hang on, I'm just calling it up on my screen. So the vehicles we have currently are, sort of the A-class support is the Tesla Roadster, the 1.X and the 2.X, and the Twizy. And both those vehicles, they have firmware specifically for those cars. So we have a version of the firmware which has got the extra full feature set just for those two cars. So one is the TR firmware, and the other is the TZ, I think it is. Twizy? I can't remember the mnemonic for it. I think it's TZ.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Tom?
Sorry, I only know TR.
TR.
Yes, hang on, I'll tell you. I'll look it up just to make
Okay.
sure we've got.
I'm now looking. See if I can.
Renault, oh no, sorry, RT.
RT. That's it.
Yeah. So TR is Tesla Roadster, and RT is Renault Twizy.
That's it.
So as well as the generic software we have, which is the production software, which supports all the known vehicles, we also have two specific firmwares, one specifically for the Tesla Roadster and one specifically for the Renault Twizy, which support just those features.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, we also have the vehicle type VA is volt or ampere, and the support for that's not too bad now. They'll do charge alerts, SOC temperatures, etc., and location.
The one thing we really want to do, and I know this is something that people are trying desperately to do, and maybe this is a call out to people to try and see if we can figure it out. Two of the features that Volt and Ampere owners really want are remote start to precondition the car, and I think unlocking is the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think starting, stopping charge. I don't know.
Yeah, start and stop charge as well. Yeah. So if you are a Volt Ampere owner and you'd like to help with the coding of that, I know that the project would like that. There's
other cars. We have O2, which is generic OBD2.
Right.
Actually, there's two versions actually. There's O2 and XX. XX is just tracking. It just a track, and O2 tries to be a bit smarter, but they're very experimental at the moment.
Right.
We have Think City TC, and support for that's not bad. It's similar to Ampere, I think.
Right. And now there's some extra code if you're willing to do some extra soldering to your car, not to your car, to the hardware. If you're a dab hand with the soldering iron, then you can add some extra support and do things like heating activation, can't you?
Yep. And then in development at the moment, so we have Nissan Leaf, the Tazari, which is a strange Italian one, the Mitsubishi IMEV is under development.
Which is also the Citroen C0 and Peugeot Ion.
Yep, and then there's another Kybers, which is a Swiss, Swiss kind of version under development. I think the IMEV support is reasonable now. It's usable.
Yeah. So if
the Nissan Leaf has just started, basically.
Yeah, it's just started, and I mean I've had a couple of plays with it. And you're looking for people to help with data dumping on those, aren't you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean the way we do the vehicle support is we start, because typically the manufacturers don't publish the information on what the car communication buses are sending, so we have to work off dumps. So we connect loggers to the car and dump out what the car is communicating about, and then we try to reverse engineer that. We try to work out what each message means.
So you essentially play, I guess, a bit of a guessing game to try and figure out detectives, and to figure out what the car is trying to say.
That's right. So the typically the read messages, finding out the status is much less intrusive, and that's why those come first. The transmit messages, I trying to start a charge, stop a charge, are harder to find because you actually have to transmit on the bus to do it, and it's your risk level of hurting something if you do something wrong is higher, particularly for development. So the transmit side messages are typically harder to do.
Now, I mean, the project's growing from strength to strength. Tom, you were one of the very first people to use it, weren't you?
I'm sorry, one of the very first people to use which?
To use OVMS in general.
I think I was in the first. I wasn't in the first wave. I don't know. I felt like a slacker. It was a couple of months before I got on board. I'd been using the Tesla Tatler, and that was working pretty well. So it took me a while before I jumped ship to the open source version.
But I mean, it's moved on quite a lot since you first jumped on board, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, the stuff that Mark's added recently with advanced charge control is amazing. It's awesome. I love that my car is charged at about 7 a.m. every morning instead of some random time.
So tell us about that, because this is a Tesla-specific feature, isn't it?
Yeah. So Mark started working on some advanced charge control features, and at the same time, I was interested in building a predictor, a charge time predictor that would make it easier to know how long it's going to take me to get a charge, which is kind of important when you're on a road trip and you want to know, how long should I spend at lunch before I come back to my car?
Yeah.
And so I used a bunch of OVMS data from people's cars to figure out how long it takes to charge under a wide variety of circumstances, and built a function. And then Mark integrated that into the advanced charge control, so I can say, hey, I want my car to be done about 7 a.m. And so OVMS looks at my state of charge and has the charge time predictor calculate, oh, it's going to take about 3 hours and 15 minutes. So then it starts 3 hours and 15 minutes before 7 a.m. And at least for me, it's been working pretty well.
It's great.
Usually finishing within about 15 minutes of 7 a.m.
I've got a challenge for OVMS actually, which I haven't talked to either of you about, but I'm going to just say it live on air now, because I was talking about this with my wife the other day, and she went, "Yeah, that would be cool." What I want is to utilize like a system, maybe somewhere on a server, that sits there and looks at my Google account, my Google Calendar, and says, "Okay, I know where you are right now. You're at home or you're in this location." Looks at your calendar and it goes, "You are due at a meeting 15 miles away in a couple of hours," and it checks the state of charge of your car to make sure that you've got enough charge to get there. And if you haven't, and you're like me, I mean, my default action when I come home is to plug my car in, even if I don't need to charge. My default action is to plug in. And I suspect a lot of Tesla owners do that because it helps the battery pack stay at the right temperature without draining the battery pack. Same with the Volt. So for the system to go, okay, you needed 2 hours away, 2 hours time, you needed 15 miles down the road, you're almost empty. Tell you what, 40 minutes before you're due to leave, I'll whack in some extra charge so your car's good to go. If you don't need to go anywhere, I won't bother, and I'll charge at night time when it's cheaper. There you go. There's a challenge. What do you reckon to that, Tom?
That's certainly possible, and you could do it. You can roll your own, right? Because Mark's made all of the logging information available, so you can look at the reports from the car from a Perl script or a PHP script, and so that would allow somebody to say, "Oh, hey, where's the car? What's the state of charge?" And it could also look at your calendar. So that feature could be added without any further work inside of OVMS itself.
There you go. So someone is feeling brave. Make it so. That would be
There's
awesome.
an interesting story someone sent me in over the Christmas holidays about ACC. I think it's quite neat. He's configured it now. So he basically drives home. As he approaches the gate, it says, "Okay, I'm coming home." It fires off the home link and opens the gate for him. Then he drives into his garage, plugs it in. It calculates how much charge he needs, schedules the charge. I think he wants 8 a.m. he leaves at. And it starts charging at whatever time in the morning it needs to start charging at to finish by 8 a.m. using Tom's charge time predictor.
That's insane.
And then he gets in the car, drives out, and as he approaches the gate, it opens the gate again for him.
That's lovely. And this is all using OVMS. It's all using the kind of the built-in hardware and firmware in OVMS. It really does show endless possibilities. And I think we should probably also mention at this point, OVMS apps now have charge data on them for charging networks. So you can use the Open Charge database to find a charging station near you, and you can even set it to only show charging stations that are compatible with your car. It will show you your current range and a circle to prove that you're within range as well, which works, I think, really, really well. I think that's really a really nice implementation. Finally, to finish off, I'm going to ask Tom. Tom, talking to OVMS using a server, like a terminal window in OS 10. That's a possibility as well, isn't it? You can pull things down using Perl scripts.
Yeah, and I can remember if I emailed my Perl script to the dev list. If I haven't, I will. But I've got a Perl script set up that can grab any of the different kinds of records, either the log records or the raw records off of the server, and you can tell it which ones you want to download. And obviously, you could take that code and build it into whatever sort of automation system you want.
Yeah, and you can download that at any point. I used to have a Raspberry Pi. I mean, I always say, if you've got an OVMS system in your car and you're a bit geeky, actually a Raspberry Pi is a great companion to OVMS, because you can either run your own OVMS server if you don't want to use the one at Tesla Motors Club. And most people will want to use Tesla Motors Club one because that's very reliable. But if you want to use your own, you can download the source code and compile it on your own server. But having a Raspberry Pi sitting at home, sitting there not doing much, and obviously not using much energy, I was able, with some help from various people, to have a script that ran every night, a cron job, which ran every night, and it downloaded the logs from my car from the day. Because the data is kept on the server, isn't it, for a finite amount of time, Mark, though. We should probably say that.
Yeah, the module itself tells the server how long it should maintain the data for.
Right. So, and then you can download that data and you can do anything with it. I mean, you could do logs from your trip. You can figure out how much, depending on the vehicle you've got, you could probably even do your wanted to. You could probably even figure out your mileage for the day, for your mileage claims.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one on the scripting side. There's one kind of annoying thing is there's a service called IFTT. If this, then that.
Yes.
And it would be one. I mean, that service could be really, really good. I mean, it's got a bunch of channels. It could hook into Google Calendar, Twitter, Mail, whatever you want. And if it can, you know, we're ready to do it from our side, but we need IFTT's help. Yes. And we've been trying to get them to do it, but not getting much response.
Yeah. So if you know IFTTT, you're connected with them, please tell them to let their OVMS work with them. They essentially, it's a kind of a place where multiple APIs can come together and work to make something cool happen. The other thing I'd like to see, actually, and I don't know if the Kickstarter's ended for it, is NinjaSphere. I don't know. I'm look at the Ninja Blocks website right now and see if it's still on Kickstarter. I think today's the last day, actually. Nope, 7 days to go for NinjaSphere. Which is a home automation system based on Linux, and again the same kind of thing. You know, have actions that are triggered and have action behaviors. The possibilities of OVMS when combined with all these other systems, absolutely incredible. So really, there is no limit, is there, guys? So, Mark, thank you very much for taking your morning out. It must be, what, 2:30 in the morning now in Hong Kong?
It's early.
It's early. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we end this hangout?
I mean, just to reiterate, this is a community project. You know, I think 3 of us started it way back years ago, and it's just really gratifying how it's grown, and we've got so many people involved doing different things now.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, and we'll add some extra hangouts over the coming years when there's new stuff on OVMS to show people how to do things, and hopefully Tom and Mark, you'll come back and help us with those as well.
Absolutely.
No problem. Okay.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much to everyone. We'll just formally say goodbye in the hangout now. This video is just over an hour and a half in length. If you want to watch it, you can, go back and skip in bits. It's going to be on YouTube now. As you might guess, this hangout is very informal. The Weekend Workshop so far have been very informal. We haven't made a song and dance about them because we're trying new stuff out. This is just a chance for us, myself and Mark Chatterley, to try new bits out as we go. But there will be more over the coming months and years. So check out our website at www.transportevolved.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/transportevolved if you want to find out more Weekend Workshops. If you haven't seen our other shows, Transport Evolved on a Sunday talks about the week's news in the world of EVs with our guests, our regular guest panelists, of which Tom is as a regular on the show, and our Friday show, which is called TEN Transport Evolved News, is for those with a short attention span. It's the week's news in the world of EV in just 10 minutes. And then we've got a couple of other shows as well, test drives and other news fun stuff too. If you want to find out more about Open Vehicle Monitoring System, of course, go to openvehicles.com, which is the website for the Open Vehicles project. You'll find all the links there to GitHub, to where you can download it, to Tom's excellent tutorials on flashing your firmware, which is recommended viewing. And if you want to do a follow-through with flashing firmware of OVMS, look through the Transport Evolved YouTube stream. There is one of these hangouts that I did a couple of months ago talking you through that. Thanks very much, everybody, and as always, don't forget to plug in. Have a good weekend. Bye.